again is that we started to really see the disempowerment of women and how many areas there are in the world where women they can't even, access a small amount of power. And that's when, Lisa brought to our attention vow and child marriage. And I got to tell you, my first reaction, and this, I'm going to be really transparent, was like, oh, wow, is this a problem? I can understand how it's a problem globally, but this is a problem in America? Dr. Mindy here.
Your body is in a war zone.
Different parts of the brain get activated depending upon how stressed you are.
When you look at it from that inflammatory.
It's interesting. I mean, that has some merit to it for sure.
And you can't control everything.
I'd say.
And what about a woman who is not pregnant, but she's aiming?
So let me just start by welcoming you, Clay, to the Resetter podcast. This discussion is much needed for my audience. So I just want to start off by welcoming you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a joy to be here with you today.
One of the things when we started to really try to touch women through the lens of health and empower women through the lens of believing in their bodies and minds again is that we started to really see the disempowerment of women and how many areas there are in the world where women they can't even, access a small amount of power. And that's when, Lisa brought to our attention vow and child marriage. And I got to tell you, my first reaction, and this, I'm going to be really transparent, was like, oh, wow, is this a problem? I can understand how it's a problem globally, but this is a problem in America? Like, I was completely naive to it. And it broke my heart when I understood that. So can we just start this conversation with, like, why is child marriage such a prevalent issue on our planet right now? And how do we just shine some light on the shadow side of our world, but also of America? Like, how did we get here?
Yeah, I think that your first reaction is one that so many people had, and one that I had, a little more than 5 years ago when I met the founders of the organization, Dr. Girls, that I run, where child marriage is one of these things that I knew happens in the world, but I had no idea that it happens at such a staggering rate. I mean, this year alone, it's crazy. This year alone, more than 12 million girls will become child brides. That equates to a girl every 3 seconds. It's an extraordinary number of futures that are being compromised day after day and week after week. And, it happens on a truly global scale, right? In the greatest concentration in Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and across Asia. But it does happen here in the U.S. It's legal in more than 30 states.
It's legal.
Yes, legal in more than 30 states.
In America, it's legal in more than 30 states to marry somebody who's underage.
Yes, correct. And it looks different state to state, but I think it's still in 35-ish states, still very much legal. It's, of course, happening in the U.S. at a much reduced rate than what we see in other parts of the world, but still happening to far too many girls because, our basic belief, right, is that this is a decision that anyone and everyone should be able to make for themselves.
Yeah.
And we know from both common sense and tons of research that if this one decision, if you're robbed of this one decision, it changes so many of the other opportunities that you have in your life. It alters and takes away so many other decisions that you get to have. So
explain to me, and I'm just going to go through the American lens right now. How does a child all of a sudden fall into a marriage she didn't want to be a part of? Like, as a parent, my first brain is like, where's the parent? And then, as somebody who tries to understand the culture, I guess my next thing would be, is this a religious thing? Like, is it attached to a religion? And I mean that with deep respect. I'm not trying to, say that religion's the problem, but I would say that's where my brain goes to, is like, oh, this must be people who are a part of certain religions. And where are the parents?
Yeah. So this is what's a bit difficult to like come to terms with around this issue, especially as we think about it on the global scale. Like you asked in your first question, like, why is this happening at such a big rate? And unfortunately, the real answer there is it happens at such a high rate because people don't believe that girls are deserving of the same choices that boys are. Like this, ingrained sort of bias against women and girls that someone might know better for them.
Wow.
That's a really, I mean, it gives me chills just saying and thinking about it.
Breaks my heart.
It breaks our heart. So what we see happening around the world and why girls become child brides is often because it's like what we've always done, right? This like local social norm that persists where, well, I had an early marriage. Your grandmother had an early marriage. Of course, you're going to have one. We also see that a lot of, I really believe, especially from meeting lots of parents around the world and talking to them about this issue, that no one does this with ill intention. Like they're primarily doing it when they're worried about everyone's going to get fed. They're often like struggling with extreme poverty. They're living in a place where either conflict or climate change is causing a lot of uncertainty in their lives. And suddenly they're looking for potential solutions, and marrying off children is one of the solutions that they turn to. And, you know, it's not, while this, like, I think global gender inequality is like sort of the underpinning.
Yes.
You know, what it looks like community to community is different. In some places it is a religion. In some places, like we were just in the Dominican Republic visiting local organizations that we've been funding there for more than 5 years. Like more vividly than other places I've seen in the world, like it was about a real fear of a girl's sexuality and that she may become sexually active and then pregnant and dishonor the family. And so we're like encouraging her to go ahead and get married while she's like 15, 16 years old.
Wow.
And
so it's protection. So the parent sees it as protection in that.
Very often.
Yeah.
Very often.
And are there dowries associated with it? Like, or is each case unique?
Each case is unique. In some places, there are things that we would refer to as dowries. Like I had the opportunity a little more than a year ago to go to Nepal to visit local organizations that we found there. Like dowries was something that was much discussed, but it's illegal in Nepal to do this. And so the dowry is like secretive, like under the table, like, you know, it's not happening out in the open. I think money is certainly a factor because of the poverty that is linked in so many places.
And are there hot spots? Again, like in America, are there hot spots in certain states that have this more? Because I think like the other part is that I'm seeing this through is like, if it's acceptable in a community, then it's like, if you're born in a female body, you just know this is probably going to be your fate because you see everybody in that community going down this path. And so I would think then there would become this moment where a girl just doesn't know any different because she was born into a community that this is your fate, and she doesn't even have another option.
Yeah, I can't speak to you about, I don't have the expertise about like hotspots in the US. I will say that the research on what has happened in the US over the last decade on the issue shows that in the majority of cases, there's a large age gap, you know, young girl, older man. And, you know, I can tell you that I know that it's still legal in California, for instance.
It's crazy.
And like from a population standpoint, I would imagine, just because it has such a large population, I would imagine that the problem is more pronounced there because of that. There's an excellent group of organizations who are going sort of state by state, like closing loopholes and changing laws. And they've done it in more than 10 states over the last maybe 3 to 4 years. And they've been working on a federal law that's in committee in Congress right now. They're working with several senators around the framing of that they hope to bring forward over the next 6 months that could make a real difference sort of across states, not having to do the state by state model.
So is this like a loophole from if I thought having sex with someone under 18, if you were over 18, I thought that was illegal. So this would be like a loophole, except if you're married, then you can, that's okay.
Correct. And you see in stories about child marriage in the US, you see like often it's happening because there's a pregnancy involved. There's something that's been happening that it's like the marriage is being used to cover something bad.
Yeah, like it could be incestual, it could be wow. Talk to me about how this dramatically changes a girl's life. I mean, I can, from a female perspective, only imagine how different my life would have been if I had been forced to marry at 16 or 17 years old. But what are the ramifications, not only for the girl, but I bet there's like even economic ramifications. Like I don't think this is just
absolutely
a problem for the girl. This is a problem for the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the number one ramification that comes to mind, that if a girl marries early, it's highly likely, like almost certain, that that's the end of her education. Like becoming a bride means no longer being a student.
Yeah.
And that's something we see in communities around the world. And so anytime that girls are out of school, their risk of child marriage or increases.
Okay.
The other, and tied to that, like, less education that you have, less earning potential that you have.
Yeah.
So, long term, your economic opportunity is decreased. There are also, though, like very serious health complications related to this, because a girl who marries while still a child is much more likely to have a child while she is still a young woman and before her body is ready. And early childbirth causes lifelong health complications for many women around the world. And I would say those are the sort of biggest impacts.
Yeah.
I also think there's a family and community impact, because something we clearly see around the world is that when women do have money, they invest it in their families, they invest it in their communities. And when women have less money, less spending, and it's a loss of contribution both to their families and communities.
Yeah. It's interesting because, again, I feel like I'm in the business of women's empowerment. And one of the things that I have watched as I've researched so many different topics is that there's a couple of different ways that you can disempower a woman very quickly. And the first is education. That is, or one of them. It's not even the first. One of the biggies is just make sure she's not educated, and then take her body rights away. And if you take those two rights away, you control her. And I've also looked at the pattern of history around a patriarchal world that we're living in. And I think it's really important when we talk about a patriarchal world that it's just power over. It doesn't mean men are bad and women are good. Like, it just means we have a structure that has power over both men and women. And I've really dove into trying to understand, well, what would be the alternative to a patriarchal society? And I found a really cool definition of a matriarchal society, which is power within. And if we can empower people within, then we are now both men and women living in a matriarchal society. It's literally that simple. So
I love that.
Right? It's like that way. It's not like we're not fighting man, woman. We're just saying we all want to live in a society that allows us to have power from within. And that's the matriarchal lens. So talk a little bit. I don't want to leave this point before we talk about the solution of how does this affect our society to allow young girls to continue to be disempowered this way? Like, what is the cultural global impact? Because I think when people listen to a podcast like this, there can be a sadness of like, oh, this is heartbreaking. But what I want us all to understand is this is heartbreaking, and it affects your life too, even if you are not exposed to some child bride. It affects the culture, which is affecting you, which is affecting your health.
Certainly. I mean, if we're living in a world where where a girl isn't able to make basic choices about her future.
Yeah.
The choice about whether or not to continue school, whether or not to, to date and fall in love, whether or not to marry if she chooses, whether or not to have children, whether or not to have a career, right? Like, that's a world in which, a staggering number of girls are living in compromised states, right?
Yeah.
Like, and without this sort of basic autonomy to say, like, this is what I want for my life.
Yeah.
I was with a grant in Nepal, and, we think about, I don't know, you probably know some teenage girls, like, in your life, right? Like, friends who have teenage girls.
I've got kids that were teenagers.
Right. And it's like, I don't know, we're used to dealing with, like, sort of empowered teens who have a lot of opinions about, like,
they do.
One of our grantees said, like, she said, Clay, like, these girls don't even know that they can dream.
Yeah.
Like, they live in a situation where, like, no one has ever told them you can be something else. You can be somewhere else.
Yes.
Right. It's just like so much about this programming is opening eyes to there's a reality beyond what you can see right in front of you. And, we want all girls to be able to have those choices.
Yeah. And, there's one of the concepts that I teach in all my books, and I've mentioned it on 1,000 videos and podcasts, is this idea of what we call the hormonal hierarchy, which is like our sex hormones are dramatically affected by insulin production, and insulin production is dramatically affected by cortisol, and cortisol can be calmed by oxytocin. So when I look at 12 million girls being married off, what I see is a world that's saturated in cortisol. And the more cortisol that we have, saturation we have in the world, the more it affects us individually on a hormonal level. And really, to restore our own sense of hormonal health, we need to bring more oxytocin into the picture, where we're loving people and we're supporting people, we're lifting people up out of troubling situations. And when we do that collectively as humanity, on an individual level, our bodies win. So this idea that we're separate from each other is erroneous. So when I hear staggering statistics like this, I'm like, we got to solve this. We got to help women, because that we are just going to perpetuate the cortisol saturation that so many people are already living in. So that's my neurochemical lens on it. Talk a little bit about VOW and like what you all are doing. And what I'm really hoping with this conversation, and I'll say it in my intro, is that I just don't want us to see this as like a car crash that we're driving by and go, isn't that sad? I want us to see that our own individual mental and physical health is dependent upon helping you all solve this problem. So talk to me a little bit about what VOW for Girls is doing.
And I really appreciate that. And you're using your platform to draw attention to this issue, because it is one that very much needs more attention, more eyeball, more heart, more funding, like if we're going to see a different outcome for girls. So I run this organization, VOW for Girls. We were founded almost 5 years ago by two people who had been deeply involved in the global movement to end child marriage and had been successful in bringing together groups from around the world who are focused on the issue, making it part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, like really getting it on the agenda. But they really came to believe that real change on this issue was not going to happen unless it was happening in communities themselves. Because someone at the UN or you or I, we may have lots of ideas about what should happen in communities, but the real truth is that change doesn't happen in a place like, Uganda or India or DRC or wherever, unless it's people who are from those communities, like really championing a different outcome.
Right.
And so they created VOW for Girls to raise awareness and funding and to be able to put that money directly in the hands of local leaders who are running effective, but like massively underfunded
Mm.
programs and organizations. So largely local women who are directly engaging in the lives of girls and have been doing it for quite a while
Mm.
and are really in a position to be those change agents in
Mm.
their communities.
I'm just curious, like, I'm thinking, what does it look like to change this in a community? Because you need to change you need to change the community, you need to change the family, you need to change, you need to help the girls see this is not right. Like, that seems like a lot of people involved in the change.
It does seem like a lot of people. And that's why proving this model has been so important over the last 5 years, because we've invested in the first 4 years, invested in around 175 of these local organizations. And we're in places where the issue looks really different. So like somewhere in the Dominican Republic, where we have around 30 organizations that we support, we intentionally chose and invested in leaders who wanted to do that kind of community engagement that you're talking about, right? So they're working with schools, they're working with parents themselves,
Yeah.
they're working with the police, with local religious leaders, sort of building this consensus that our community is going to be better if girls are able to make their own decision about marriage.
Got it.
And seeing great success in that and sort of building consensus at the community level, where it goes from, well, of course we're going to marry our girls all, to, well, of course we're going to let our girls make their own decision about this. And we're seeing that real change on the community level, place to place. So much of this, though, is really important engagement with parents.
Yes.
Like, it's something that across our grantees, no matter whether or not they're working on things related to education, like helping girls stay in school, or things related to economic opportunity, like helping girls learn to make money so they can contribute to their families, or things about their health, making sure that girls know how pregnancy happens, how to avoid it.
Right.
For all of these things, they're engaging parents, because parents are really critical to seeing this change.
Yeah.
Because they're so often the one that's saying yes or no.
Right. I mean, that's what I like. I literally, how I started this conversation was like, what parent would do this? And then now I'm seeing, they're seeing it as protection, which, then I also go to, well, in a time in America when contraception is being put out as optional and maybe not available for women, that seems like now we're only going to see a spike in more of these child marriages, because if we can't make contraception, easy for girls to get, the pregnancy rates are going to go up, which means parents are going to double down on this. And this is just topical right now because of the political scene here in America, that if girls don't have access to contraception, we got a bit, you all, in your organization now are going to come back and be like, it's not 12 million anymore. Now it's like 24 million, because parents are going to double down on this protection.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, because so many of, like, I was with a group last year, and we were talking to parents about what's their experience around their girls being in this group. And like the parents, like, sharing with us that they were learning things about sex that they had never known,
Oh
because
my
their
God.
girls are in this program, and things about their bodies that no one had ever told them. Like, now my daughter is the one who's like educating me about this.
Awesome.
But I agree, like, like things like contraception being used to oppress, like, and withholding contraception being used to oppress. That's exactly the kind of thing we're addressing, in terms of making sure girls are not only aware of how their bodies function, but also have the resources to be in the sort of driver's seat, if you will, of those decisions.
Where does that education happen? Because it's not happening in schools. So where is a girl going to get, like, I remember when my kids were teenagers, I'm in Silicon Valley. I raised them in Silicon Valley. There were like really cool programs that you could like send your kid to, and they would teach them everything. If you were a parent that was like, I don't want to sit down and have this conversation, there was like, okay, they can teach them everything from contraception to respecting your body, to how to have great sex. Like, let's just bring it out into the light. And it was really popular here in Silicon Valley in families that were wanting to help their, both. And there was a girls' class and a boys' class. So how I'm now thinking just about communities that don't want to talk about it. schools that are not going to put it on the curriculum, how do these girls get this kind of access to information?
Funny, what you described, seeing in Silicon Valley, is one of the ways that girls are getting this access in communities around the world. So one of the number one sort of interventions that our community partners are implementing are the creation of girls clubs or girls leadership clubs, sometimes boys and girls clubs together, largely that function as after school type activities. But regardless of where they happen and when they happen, the things that I see being similar as I've visited so many of them is giving girls a safe space where they can come together, where they can learn about everything from what their rights are to some basics of financials and money to like sort of hands-on skills that they could then use to like make things that they could sell for money, like, on and on. But largely though, they give them a space and a mentor figure that they can both share about their lives and learn. And if their future is somehow at risk, they have someone to go to.
Yeah.
Like we were in Nepal and I met this young woman who she was 15 years old. She very matter-of-factly said, I've been in this program for 2 years. Last year, my parents came to me and they told me that it was time for me to marry.
Wow.
I said, that's a violation of my rights. And I knew that because of this program. And I told them if they married me, I would go to the police. And they said, oh, we won't do that then. Like very matter-of-factly. Like, so I think like one of the biggest things that's happening in these programs that we support, whether or not they're safe spaces or whether or not they're like sports or drama clubs that are teaching girls about their rights while building their agency, it's an opportunity for them to learn, like, I am a person with rights. This is what I didn't mention this, but in all these places where we're working, the practice is illegal. It's just happening at a tremendous rate.
Wow.
So they learn about their rights and they know what to do if someone is infringing upon them.
Yeah, that and what I hear in that's power within. That's it.
Yeah.
It's and this is the interesting concept that I've been really trying to teach to women is that there's so many places we give our power away. And for like the lens that I've been teaching my following is like we give it away when we go in the doctor's office and the doctor we like list off a bunch of things that symptoms that are really hormonal changes that are going on in our body. And the doctor writes us an antidepressant prescription. Like all of a sudden that's where our power has been taken away. So when you educate a woman and you say, hey, when you go into the doctor's office, here's the questions you want to answer, you want to ask, here are the things you want to think about. If they hand you an antidepressant, like stand up for yourself there. And what I heard is that's exactly what you're doing. And we could put that across all these disempowering places. Is like, if we're going to bring the and I want to think of another word other than power, but bring the awareness of an equality of women up, it's going to actually, what I'm hearing that you're doing is it starts with the woman. It doesn't start necessarily with pointing fingers at the culture. It starts with teaching the woman.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because I think that no one's going to win with the pointing fingers approach.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
so
and it's why someone like me can't like show up in a community and be like, you got to change this. Like, never going to work.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely not. And so while this sort of girl-centered and the consensus approach takes more time and isn't like, it's social norm change, right?
Yeah.
Like we're leading, our local partners are leading the social norm change in their communities and seeing real change. But we believe that this is the only way that it's going to stay because like once you stop this practice, you're not going to be starting again. Like,
right. But once you stand up to your parents and you say you can't marry me, what else can that girl do in her life? Like that's like the door in to empowering a woman. Now she gets to do that over and over and over again, which is
agreed. We were in the Dominican Republic and met with this woman who we've been funding for 5 years. And I was like, what's the biggest change that you have seen over the last 5 years? And without missing a beat, she said, 5 years ago, the girls would come into this program. I couldn't get them to say a word. And now they won't stop telling me what they think.
Oh yeah, right. That's dangerous to the society.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's like, keep talking.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, it's much easier to keep us quiet. So, wow, that's so cool. What do you do about the girls that already are married? Like, I like, it's really, this has been helpful for me because I now see your long-term vision, and it's so in alignment with women's empowerment for me and what I'm trying to do. Like, my win is when a woman comes out of the doctor's office and she feels like she was an equal. She feels like she had a collaborative conversation. I'm like, yes, because you educated yourself and now you can stand up for yourself. So I love this vision of let's change it change the girl and empower the girl. What about the girl that's already in the marriage? What about maybe she's 10, 20 years into the marriage? Like, is there any help that we can give her or that woman?
So what I can speak to is that so many of our local partners are working to make sure that girls who do become child brides still have opportunities. They still get to finish school, or girls who may have a child early, like in the wake of the pandemic in Uganda, a lot of girls became pregnant while schools were closed. They had the longest school closure in the world.
Oh, wow.
And one of our partners who we fund there, who's more of an advocacy organization, forced a change nationwide that had said that pregnant girls could not be in school. And like, which opened school for thousands of girls who had become pregnant, like during the pandemic.
Wow.
And so, I definitely see and hear partners talking about who are, I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but like supporting girls' decisions to leave unions, like at different points, but that's not a sort of core thing that our grantees are focused on. Like primarily it's hard. And
really hard.
That we're providing is about prevention of. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So on this topic, it's way easier to prevent than to actually dismantle them from the marriage. Yeah. Yeah. So talk a little bit about the biggest challenges that Vow for Girls has, and, how can we support you? How can we lift you up? Like, what maybe some of the things that you have coming down the road, because I'm really hoping people in my world see why it's important to support you all.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the biggest challenge overall is one of awareness, certainly, right? People not realizing that this is such a global problem, that it happens on the scale that it does. And I'm hoping that through this conversation and other ways that, your listeners might interact with us, that they see that not only does this exist, but there are also really tangible ways that I could do something about it. Like, we provide a mechanism to empower incredible local women who are real heroes to me, and because they are standing up to often like centuries of tradition in their communities and saying like, we deserve different and better than this.
Wow.
And we're a mechanism through which to directly support those organizations. We also, like, for readers for whom this is important, like we run a model where foundations and generous individuals pay for the operating costs of the organization, so that 100% of everything that's donated goes right to these community organizations. Amazing. And so I'd say like awareness is a big challenge. I think too, just like, building, like it's a challenge of the last 5 years has been like building sort of a community at scale around this work. Like, we've been able to work with like so many incredible people who, like, we do some work with brands who make us part of their business. Like, we work with individuals who are having celebrations themselves and like say like, oh, instead of gifts, like, why don't you donate to this cause? And also just people who directly support us as part of their personal philanthropy. And, while money, it's like,
every nonprofit, you can say it, every nonprofit wants money. I mean, this is why we're doing Give
Every nonprofit wants money, right? Like, the reason we exist is to support these local women, these local leaders, and it's the dollars make the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I was sitting here thinking, you've only been around for 5 years, but what you need to do is, once you get those girls empowered, you need to put them on your staff, You need to bring them in to Vow for Girls and let them run this.
I agree.
Like they'll make the best employees because they will be so, so connected to the cause. Well, one of the challenges, or one of the, I don't know if it's a challenge, but I can just tell you as somebody who has donated money to organizations like this, where it's just so heartfelt. It's not like I'm just writing a check. Like my heart is breaking as I'm listening to this, is how can we see the progress you're doing? How can we watch the emotional journey that you are all on, so that we feel like we're a part of the solution? Like, I'll give you an example. Like, if you go down and, one of the organizations that Give Like a Girl is supporting is an organization that goes into Mexico and builds homes for single moms. And so there's a actual real tangible, like, do-gooding kind of feel there. Mm-hmm. I can imagine there has to be something like this. Like, if I donate money, is there a way for me to see that progress, to feel like I'm a part of this incredible mission you all are on?
I ask myself this question all the time.
Yeah.
Around how do we make this work sort of vivid and tangible for people, right? But some of the things that we've been experimenting with are sort of virtual visits to communities where we get to hear directly from local leaders, local girls, see programming, and but people are doing it virtually and joining us for conversations around that. A lot more of hearing directly from girls themselves, like about their lives, what they want. Like, actually today and the rest of this week, we're doing some of that work with girls in Uganda who have been in programming for 5 years, hearing about their experiences, what they want for other girls in their communities. And I'm constantly trying to think about, like, how do we make this like come to life for people without them having to travel to like a tiny community in Nepal, like in the middle of nowhere. Which takes a really long time to get to. Yeah.
Is there a way? It's interesting. I just was with a friend who's a big podcaster here in LA, or when I was in LA, and she was telling me that she was thinking of adopting a senior that doesn't have any family, and like actually like going, I guess there's a program where you can go and adopt a senior and you can sit and be with them because they're lonely. I'm thinking, is there a way where you're like, hey, I'm going to give X amount of money, and then a girl is going to give me updates of one specific girl is going to give me updates on her life. And then I get to follow that life and know that I made an impact in that.
Yeah, I think that some organizations have done that. Honestly, I can't speak to the model. I know that there are complicated thoughts about that in the world of philanthropy.
Yeah.
But I think the intent behind the question is the right one, right? About like, how do I, as a donor, see the impact of what I'm doing?
Yeah, right.
And continue to feel excited about it, want to bring other people into it, want to continue. I mean, I think this is a big question that philanthropy is wrestling with, about how to do that in a way that sort of meets like where consumers are on other things.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing that I had heard, but then I heard you guys did away with this, was people could put it on a donation on their registry when they're getting married.
Oh, no.
You still have that?
No, we still do that. We just do it a little differently than we used to. So for people who are, if anyone's listening, they're planning a wedding or any other kind of celebration, we'd love to work with you on that. We've been able to work with thousands of couples now around moments of celebration where they say, either in addition to or instead of gifts, make a donation to Vow for Girls. Yeah. Like very much saying, like, in celebration of the choice that we're able to make, I want to support the choices of others.
Yes.
And what we do today is we create really simple but personalized charitable registries. And they can have your photo, a message from you as a couple. We have incredible stories of couples who have been inspired to include us, and their guests being like really generous around those moments and like wanting to support a charity that they feel deeply about. Yeah.
When I heard that, I was like, that's genius, because you're using you're using the choice of marriage, this beautiful thing that so many people enter into with so much happiness. and you're shedding light on the fact that not every girl gets to make that choice. So, I'm even thinking like, when I start the next wedding I'm going to go to, I'm going to, whether they asked or not, I'm going to say I made a donation to you to Vow for Girls, in honor of the choice you got to make. And I think,
I love that.
yeah, like nobody's going to be like, what'd you
Yeah.
do? Like, I think everybody will be like, I see a really large amount of my following doing that, because it's not just giving you all money, but it's really giving awareness.
Yeah, definitely. And besides weddings, we've done some collaborations around big anniversaries, retirement, graduations,
Oh, yeah.
birthday. Other people have, a person last year created a tennis tournament, like using the same model,
Amazing.
wanting to support us. So it's really fun in that way. It's a different way to involve people as
Yeah.
well. And I think so many couples who are celebrating, like often you don't really want anything.
Right.
Yeah, especially depending on your life stage. It's like, do I need another toaster?
Right,
Like, no.
exactly. Like, do I need more stuff? Like, and I'm not a stuff person. So I'm, they just came up with a new love language, and there's two new love languages. And the one that I resonate with is experiences. And I've come to this place in my time, my point in my almost 55th year, that I really like having experiences with other humans. And I would rather spend money on that than on any physical item. And, we have a very altruistic following. We have a lot of postmenopausal women whose daughters are up and out of the house, or kids are up and out of the house. And I really am going to highlight this for our community, because I think there's as much joy in giving something to Vow as if you gave, an object to somebody. I think, and then everybody gets the joy. Like, you get the joy, the person receiving it gets the joy, the girl that gets pulled out of this situation gets the joy. Like, there's more of the joy to go around in this kind of gift.
Absolutely. I love that. And we all need more joy.
We all need more joy. It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, Clay, I just, again, like, thank you for what you're up to.
Thanks so much for bringing me on, and thanks for highlighting us through Give Like a Girl.
Yeah.
It's really an honor to collaborate with you.
Yeah. So, okay, speak a little bit about, you've got a big event coming up, or you're part of International Day for the Girl. Is it like for the girl? Is that what this is?
Yeah, absolutely. So October 11 every year is International Day of the Girl. It's a day to celebrate the power and potential of girls everywhere.
Wow.
For Vow for Girls, it's always a really important time to shine light on our work, to lift up the stories of change that are happening around the globe. This year, we have people who support us from around the globe holding their own Girls' Night campaigns in October and November, like just bringing together women that they love and men who love women in support of our work, like over drinks or dinner or fitness, whatever they choose. But International Day of Girls, October 11th, later this week.
Amazing. So, okay, talk to me a little bit about what that would look like. Like, if I have a group of women that I'm like, hey, ladies' night out on October 11th, we're going to celebrate International Day of the Girl. Like, would we then like gather women together and be like, and we're all going to donate. So we'll go have drinks and everybody donate what X amount of money. Is that kind of, it's just gathering people together to bring awareness to the empowerment of girls.
Yeah, right on. So you say to your friend, hey, we're going to happy hour on this date. It could happen anytime this fall. We're going to happy hour on this date. Here's a link that I've set up for our girls' night. Like, I invite you before drink to make a donation with me in support of this cause that I care deeply about. And then you just get together and you have a great time. We have, for people who want to do events and want to have sort of a short program, we have a guide for that and a way to make it really easy. But largely it's about like enjoying the joy of being together and with one another and just making a bit of an impact alongside it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I mean, this is something that I call them the mama bears. The mama bears are going to grab this idea, and I think it's the mama bears that are going to change the world, honestly. And the mama bears could easily gather all the other mama bears and do something as simple as raise awareness for you all on that spectacular day. So we will leave the link on how you learn more information on that in the notes. And so hopefully people will engage in that.
And October 11th is really like the sort of kickoff, like, the season to support girls for us. So like events will happen anytime that the remainder of the year.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
yeah, that'd be great.
Clay, I can't let you go without asking my final question that will be really interesting to hear what you have to say on this one. And and I say that just because we typically talk about health on this podcast, and yet I see this as all a part of our health. So this is a large reason why I wanted this conversation. But my question to you is, what's the definition of health for you, and how do you know when you're healthy?
I think the definition of health for me is when I feel really in balance with myself.
Yeah.
And that for me is a combination of the combination of like the food and exercise I'm taking in, my own attention to my mindfulness, and building space for quiet and reflection, and like really about listening to my body and how I'm feeling and what it needs.
Yeah.
And I think, as someone who does like a lot of travel for this work and honors, it's like really easy to fall out of balance. So it's something that I'm constantly thinking about.
Yeah.
Like, what does balance look like for me when I'm on a plane versus like when I'm at home and like working from there? And something I'm constantly working on.
Yeah. Yeah. We all are. Yeah. You know what? I'm also going to put into that something that I have told my kids over and over again, is that if you want lasting happiness, stop thinking about what you're going to get in life and start thinking about what you're going to give in life. And I really think that, again, as being so intimately involved in Vow for Girls, just being in that service, that place of service, has to be a huge health and happiness driver for you.
It absolutely is.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Well, Clay, I could talk to you forever. I really hope we meet one day, and please.
Me too.
Yeah. Please.
I'll let you know when I'm coming to California.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. I would love that.
I will.
And tell everybody, your whole team, like, thank you. And we hear you, and we want to support you, and we just appreciate what you all are up to.
Thank you so much. It's a joy to meet you.
Yeah, thank you.